is really talk about why we're here and what LOHAS is about. So what I'm going to do is talk about where LOHAS came from and where it's going. So some people think LOHAS is just a conference, and it's not. I think it's much bigger than that. It talks about two different things. It talks about the values, the ideals that an individual have or has, and there's a lot of them. And it also talks about the market that caters to those ideals. And who are these people that have these ideals? Well, there's a lot of them here in the room. And some of you have heard me say this story, but others may have not. But we'll walk through a utopic day for this individual. They may wake up in the morning and do some meditation or yoga. May ride their bike to work or take some alternative transportation. Buy their food at the local farmer's market that's organic and natural. They they aspire to live in a green-built home powered by wind and powered by solar, and do some community service on the weekend, and then also perhaps treat themselves to a eco spa treatment of sorts. Does that resonate with anybody? So these are this is the utopic life that the LOHAS individual aspires to have. And really, it's something that has happened that's about, at one point was 20% going on. For people in society, only 20% of them are doing it, but now 80% of people are doing it at some point in their life. But where did they come from? Where did they start? Did they just all appear? I don't think so. So what I'd like to do is look back in terms of some of the elements of environmental, kind of the evolution of environmentalism in society, as well as some of the certain elements within our history that have had certain implications with us and really impacted us. The one thing that I like to go back to is transcendentalism and what was going on in the 1820s and the 1830s with writers such as Emerson and Thoreau and Martin Fuller. They were all talking about this connection to nature and taking yourself out of society and bringing yourself into isolation, into nature, surrounding yourself with what is God's creation. And in doing so, that would reflect upon you the image of God, which was ultimately the image within yourself. Nature was a reflection of that. And in Walden Pond and also in Emerson's nature essays, they talk a lot about this and how to connect with the true self, thus the ultimate community could then be created. I feel this when I walk through the forests of Colorado, and I think a lot of people do. When you're out there in nature, you can feel there's an energy, there's something that's connecting with us, and this sense of peace. And studies have shown this more and more, that heart rates go down when you're engaged with nature. This is something that I totally agree with. The other things that were going on at this time, and unfortunately this is the wrong slideshow that I have, but a couple things were happening at the same time with, and I'm going to go back here, with what was going on in nature. During this time was also, we saw conservation elements being created. So we had Yosemite being developed, and the desires for nature to have a voice and they have rights. Nature has inherent rights. So we saw the development of Yosemite and the Sierra Club from John Muir in the early 1900s. And this is something that really kind of gave people like an idea that, hey, we need to do something to protect things. This was a time when American bison were being slaughtered just for the sake of watching animals die. And carrier pigeons were extinct. There was a voice that needed to be brought up to protect these areas. And protection and conservationists that was the beginning of that movement at that time. At the same time, we also saw beautiful pictures created by people like Ansel Adams, using the technology of the time to bring high definition, high resolution photography that brought about vivid images of majestic landscapes. And that was something that was also portrayed within our art culture. And it was something that was very, very important for, again, conveying that nature is something that we all need to be aware of and protecting. And while this was going on, we had this era of urbanization and suburban lifestyles and the increase in the desire for the white picket fence, the Chrysler and the Dodge, the elements of a prosperous living conditions. So suburban lifestyles were created, and with that were a whole host of new products that were created for them. So we saw lawnmowers, we saw also television, and we saw this lifestyle evolved to be much more kind of product oriented, which was also the golden years of television. And so advertising for this was the ethos of the golden era of television, and the advertising of today can be really brought back to the times in which advertising at that time was really focused on people surrounding themselves around it, or having a television, and families being surrounding themselves around the television and meeting. This was connecting, and this was the first time that mass media was really used to connect and convey messages based on branding. This was also a time when innovations with chemicals were created, and this was when DDT was really used in the 50s in terms of use of malaria epidemics, and DDT was sprayed on children, it was sprayed on beaches, and that brought about Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, really questioning whether or not toxins would be really useful when they're not, the implications and the ecological and health detriments weren't well known. So these things were kind of happening in parallel tracks. So this was in the early 60s when this occurred. So this kind of brought about the awareness that maybe companies aren't really looking out for the best interest of society. So people were starting to question this. And again, here's an image of some of what was going on with the lifestyle and the commercialization of the products that were exploding at that time. Here's an image of the ad that was, some ads talking about the impressions. Again, keeping up with the Joneses, that was actually a concept that was created in the 50s. Then, following the 50s, was the counterculture. These people were the children who were part of the 50s that were rebelling against kind of what was thought of as being restrictive, being really kind of compartmentalized. This was free expression. A lot of the social movements were created in the 60s, whether it be civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, the anti-war movement. All of these things were going on in which there was a lot of experimentation as well. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, yes, of course. But also other elements such as communal living, self-reliant farming, also experimentation with Eastern religions. And these echo transcendentalism of the 1830s, if you think about it. They're saying the same things. They're trying to extract themselves out of existing society, getting back to nature. Flower children, remember them. That kind of thing, those kinds of concepts. These children of the 60s are the boomers of today. And from those boomers of today, they've created some of the best brands. Here's some of these. Hold on. Yeah, this was the pause. Some of the brands that we know as LOHAS brands. And these brands, they've taken the ethos of what they remember from the 60s, what was very impressionable, and applied it into having businesses of today. Today's LOHAS consumer is much savvier than anyone has ever been before. They're early adopters. They're the ones who are the box turners. They're the researchers and investigators. People who use technology the most. They're the ones who are bringing things into mainstream consciousness. They're the ones who educate their family and friends on what they find as initiatives. The market size for LOHAS is, in 2008, was about $290 billion. And it was comprised of these 6 categories here. Personal health, which includes natural organic foods, alternative therapies, alternative media, all of these things $117 billion. Green building, $40 billion. Ecotourism, $24 billion. Natural lifestyles, $10 billion. And this is philanthropy, apparel, interior design, etc. in that category. Alternative transportation, $6 billion. Alternative energies, about $250 million or $500 million. These are all 2008 numbers. I believe that this has grown dramatically to be over $300 billion just in the US alone. And these are B2C purchases only. This is not B2C, or sorry, B2C purchases, not B2B. So here is what the LOHAS consumer makeup looks like today in the US. Some of you have been to the marketing panel today. Some of you may have seen this, but this is based off the National Marketing Institute studies they annually do on consumers who are 18 and older. So of the adult population, LOHAS comprises about 18%. And these individuals are people who consider themselves global citizens. They are the ones who think about where things are coming from, who made them, how they are engaged with myself, and then where they're going once I'm done with them. So they think of themselves as planetary, involved, engaged in all kinds of elements in that area. Naturalites are people who come into National Organic Foods primarily for their own individual health benefits. So they may have allergies, they may have kids, and they're the ones who are seeking specific things and how it affects me individually and not so much about planetary aspects. The next one are drifters, and drifters tend to follow behind naturalites and LOHAS consumers in terms of a trend. If they see that the trend gets picked up, they tend to follow right behind it and follow, and not so much are focused on values. Conventionals are about 27%, and they're very practical. They look at things from a cost perspective. For example, Energy Star appliances, they're looking at it in terms of energy savings. They're very cost-oriented. And then unconcerns are just people who don't care. It's a neighborhood number one. So, like I said, LOHAS consumers are early adopters. Here's a map that I think is really interesting about the creative class. And this is also an area where I think LOHAS consumers congregate. They tend to congregate in areas of urban locations where there's a lot of ideas that mix and match. And you can also see that they are in kind of different areas such as Boulder or Minneapolis, where there's a lot of innovation in these different areas. And this is something that you can find in terms of creative class and density. There's another term for really LOHAS consumers. LOHAS also has spread globally. So for some of you who may not know, LOHAS is massive in Asia. And back in the mid-2000s, a Japanese group came to LOHAS, took the concept to Japan, and it was one of those amazing phosphorus spikes that just rocketed in Japan and just took off. And at one point, 75% of all the websites when you search for LOHAS were Japanese. And because it took off so rapidly, it really ebbed and flowed into different Asian cultures. And the reason why I think this happened is because it embodies traditional Asian values but wraps it in Western packaging. And it's very attractive thus for the younger generations. I mean, look at Hello Kitty. I mean, come on. This is great. Look at that brand there. But with that, you see things in China, for example. You see LOHAS hotels, you see LOHAS department stores, there's LOHAS TV shows, there's LOHAS tourist groups in the Philippines, there's LOHAS marketing from Singapore to other Asian countries. In fact, in Chinese, that O on the top screen, those two Chinese characters are LOHAS, which mean happy living. So it translates in Chinese as to be happy living, and a lot of people can get behind that. So what's next? Are we going to dominate the world? Is that our ultimate goal at LOHAS? The answer is no. I don't think so. Is the LOHAS consumer percentage going to just take over everything? No, it's not. Why? It's because LOHAS consumers are always going to be upstream. They're always going to be innovative. They're always going to be creating new ideas. Take, for example, bags that we bring to the grocery store. It used to be paper or plastic. That was the common phrase that you were asked. Now, we see that a lot of people are bringing their own bags to the grocery store. Look at light bulbs. It used to be just regular incandescent light bulbs that were available. And now we see CFL light bulbs available at Home Depot, Walmart, those areas. So what's coming next after CFLs? LEDs. We see now hybrids. Hybrids were an anomaly car. 10 years ago, they were very obscure. Now we see them as a car of choice or just another car on the road. What's next? Electric. Electric vehicles will be coming in. So LOHAS consumers are the ones who bring the innovations. They're constantly pushing the envelope as to what's next. What can we do better? What can we improve upon? We also want to create a better way of thinking. And I challenge everybody here, especially at this conference, to think, how can we improve critical thinking for our communities? How can we evolve our ideas of what problems are and transcend those to get to new ideas and new creative imaginations that we would never think of otherwise? And that's something that I think that we here at LOHAS can do in coming in with an open mind. Just like our exercise that we just did in terms of breathing and relaxing, that shifted something in us, that shifted something in how we currently are. We can continue to do this. And I think that this conference is an area where you can find relationships and collaborations that you would never find elsewhere. Reason being is that what LOHAS does is it's this larger umbrella. It's a larger umbrella of an understanding of all of these different market verticals. We've got people who are focusing on food. We've got people focusing on personal care. We've got people focusing on clean technology. We've got people here focusing on media and marketing. Other people focusing on investment. Other people on yoga. But the yoga company never really talks to the organic food company. It doesn't talk to the clean tech company. But they're all targeting the same consumer. So what LOHAS does, it builds a web of context, a thread of context between all of you to understand how to connect, how to communicate, and see what are the opportunities. We don't want to be the noisy tourists. And I think that I always, if you're in another country, and you see someone who's not communicating with the local, and then you speak louder, and you speak louder and louder. Have you ever seen that? It's just disgusting. I think that what happens is that sometimes we get so engaged in our own and passionate about our own causes that we don't recognize the fact that the other person may not be listening. And I think that we need to really understand and recognize empathy with the other people, get their messages, understand what their touch points are. Once you understand those touch points, you have a better opportunity and a chance to really communicate with other people. It's really something that once we get to those places, we can get in touch with that aspirational self, the creative piece in all of us. I really challenge everybody to stay curious here at the conference. Curious in terms of who the people are who are coming, who they really are, not who they represent, but who they really are. And in doing so, I think you'll find that other people are really curious about who you are. So with that, I really wish you all an amazing conference.